Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, offering convenient delivery and free pickup to help with the busy times this holiday. Online customers enjoy the same prices, deals, and rewards as in-store. Get started in the Safeway app or at Safeway.com.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Tens of thousands of homes across the Front Range went dark yesterday as winds in some places pushed past 100 miles an hour. The blackouts hit especially hard in Boulder, Clear Creek, Jefferson, and Weld counties. Schools closed, travel was disrupted, and powerful gusts knocked down trees and traffic signals. Excel says some areas could stay in the dark into Friday. The good news is, as of recording, there are no reports of fire. If that changes, we'll bring you a special update. So hopefully, you won't hear from me for a while. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel. Coming up, a groundbreaking weather research lab in Boulder could be on the chopping block, and Colorado Democrats think it's not just about science policy.
I think it is clearly animated by both their desire to gut climate science programs across the country and animated by a desire to retaliate against Colorado specifically.
Then, how are Coloradans feeling about the economy? Not great.
So multiple people mention the price of pet food increasing along with groceries, call it petflation.
We put you in the middle of those conversations. Plus, DIA might have the most famous airport roof in the world, but its iconic design was actually born from necessity.
He called me and I sat down at his desk and he said the building is over budget.
It's Thursday, December 18th. Here's the news in Colorado Today. In a week marked by high fire risk and the Front Range experiencing temperatures far above average, the Trump administration vowed to dismantle one of the world's leading weather research institutions. Boulder's National Center for Atmospheric Research, or NCAR, is the latest target in an effort to roll back federal climate science. CPR's climate reporter Sam Brash has covered NCAR for years. Sam, what exactly does NCAR do?
So NCAR was founded way back in 1960 with a pretty simple mission: to lead U.S. efforts to better understand the Earth's atmosphere to improve weather prediction. And since then, it's really been on the cutting edge of all kinds of tools that we rely on every day to understand what's going to happen with the weather. So think supercomputers to predict the path of hurricanes, basic, weather radar that we've grown accustomed to seeing on the nightly news. NCAR contributed to all of those technologies. Today, it has more than 800 employees. It also has this brutalist lab that sits on a hill above Boulder called the Mesa Lab. And that's really become an icon for the country's investment in atmospheric science and Colorado's role as a destination for the world's top researchers.
Okay, so an iconic building and really useful science that is being done there. Why is the White House targeting NCAR now?
It seems like this is really about ideology. So in a social media post on Tuesday, White House Budget Director Russell Vought claimed that NCAR is one of the country's largest sources of, quote, climate alarmism. That's the idea that scientists are using their work to unreasonably alarm the public about climate change. It's also a term that's all over Project 2025, a plan partially authored by Vought to guide the second Trump administration.
Climate alarmism. Do you have any idea how NCAR scientists are reacting to all of this?
I do. I spoke to Dan Powers. He leads CoLabs, a group working to support federal research in Colorado. And he told me NCAR scientists feel disillusioned and unfairly punished for doing a job that's helped us predict the weather, kept troops safe abroad, and revealed basic ideas about climate change.
Science and research can sometimes be alarming, but closing labs like NCAR doesn't make decades of facts any less true.
Now, Sam, as many of our listeners know, you spent all year covering how other Colorado climate and energy research institutions have come under pressure.
Yeah, that's definitely a big theme this year on my 2025 Wrapped. Look, we've talked about the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which operates a major lab in Boulder and has been subject by the Trump administration trying to significantly cut its budget and close that Boulder lab. We've also watched Chris Wright, the U.S. Secretary of Energy, visit what was the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Golden and say he didn't really want them to focus on renewable energy technologies like wind and solar.
And then earlier this month, the White House actually scrapped renewable from NREL's name.
That's right. It's now the National Lab of the Rockies. And just to keep us up to date, earlier this week, the Trump administration released plans to cancel more than $100 million in transportation grants to do things like improve railroads in northern Colorado and help Fort Collins buy electric vehicles.
All these cuts and changes to Colorado-based programs, are things like this happening nationwide, or is our state being singled out for some reason?
If you listen to Colorado's Congress members, they certainly feel like there's an ulterior motive here. Rep. Joe Neguse, a Democrat whose district covers Boulder, suggested the announcement that NCAR is being broken up was
clearly retaliatory action by the Trump administration connected to the state's refusal to honor the lawless request by the Trump administration for the release of Tina Peters.
An appearance by former Mesa County Clerk, Tina Peters.
She might be in prison, but she's showing up in every one of our stories. And it feels kind of telling that Vote, the OMB director, also wrote on X that any activities such as weather research will be moved to another entity or location. And as you can imagine, it's not just Rep. Neguse who's upset about all this. Governor Polis released a statement saying that dismantling NCAR would let U.S. adversaries gain a competitive advantage in scientific research.
CPR Sam Brash, thank you.
Thank you.
The year-end holidays are a time when a lot of us have to come to grips with our finances, how much we're spending, how much we're saving, and how solid we feel overall. A bipartisan team of pollsters wanted to check in with Coloradans who are likely to vote about how they're feeling about the economy. CPR Steph Rivera read through the poll, and she also collected the stories of dozens of Coloradans struggling with their finances. She spoke to Bozzy about what she'd been hearing.
Steph, how much are finances on Coloradans' minds these days?
So we know from that recent poll that Coloradans are now more concerned with the state's budget and spending, and on a more personal level with social programs like SNAP. The survey of more than 600 people was done by the Colorado Polling Institute, and it found that 61% of Colorado voters said they have cut spending on non-essential items in the past year.
Cut spending. What does that look like for people? How's that playing out for them?
Yeah, so dozens responded with anecdotes of a difficult job market and staving off unnecessary spending. Some said they were one medical emergency or appliance breakdown away from a real financial struggle. And one Coloradan estimated that they forego about 85% of non-essential purchases. That's even after making decent money, budgeting excessively, and using coupons and discounts.
Colorado has been in a period of slower job growth. What did people tell you about that, about their personal experience with it?
So one stark example, a Denver area resident said they were interviewing for a part-time job at the meat counter at Whole Foods, and they were told they received over 200 applications in 3 days.
200? That must feel discouraging for job applicants. Are there other things you learned about people's finances that surprised you?
Yeah, so multiple people mentioned the price of pet food increasing along with groceries. Call it petflation.
Petflation.
So this was a surprise to me because I haven't had a furry pet for a long time now. I mostly stick to crickets and worms for my bearded dragon, and those are still pretty cheap.
At least bugs are still affordable.
That's right. But going back to pet costs, this particular problem is due to supply chain issues left over from the pandemic and increased demand for premium wet food. That's according to a CBS News report. That report found that pet food prices have climbed more than 20% since 2022. How much that expense affects people really varies, though. We heard from a man who feels like the price of pet food is increasing rapidly, but said it won't affect his holiday spending. But then a woman cited pet supplies, along with groceries, as why she's delaying her retirement for now.
That's a lot of petflation and inflation to have to delay your retirement. For those who are retired, I could see how price increases must be especially hard, when you're on a fixed income.
Yeah, so one respondent talked about the difficulty in balancing finances on a fixed income as a senior who owns their home. They said, quote, down to our last bit of money in our retirement fund. No Christmas this year.
If many people's finances are tighter, did you get a sense of whether more people are turning to food banks or other assistance?
Yes, we heard from someone who's found themselves going to a food bank for the first time in their life because their student loan is more than their mortgage. And then someone else who is using community resources to help care for their 1-year-old child. And you also get a sense of how rapidly things can change for people. We heard from someone who said a sudden, costly home repair and decreased Social Security benefits left them feeling defeated.
So, Steph, having read through the poll of hundreds of Coloradans and then heard stories from dozens more, what would you say is the main takeaway here about people's financial situations?
So as I know we've reported, Colorado's numbers don't indicate a textbook recession, but on the ground for individuals and their families, there is a sense of a downturn. One expert recently called this a vibe session, and that might be a perfect description of how Coloradans are feeling. No bubbles are bursting or markets collapsing, but it sure doesn't feel that way when you walk out of the grocery store with one bag of food that you paid $100 for. And still, we may not get a full picture of how much people's worries are turning into reduced spending until next year, when we see how the holiday shopping season pans out.
CPR's Steph Rivera. Thanks, Steph.
Thanks, Bazi.
You might find yourself at Denver International Airport this holiday season, picking up visitors or getting away yourself. Well, when heading to or from DIA, there's no missing the roof over the Great Hall, with that white fabric stretched to heights that echo Colorado's real peaks looming just to the west. Turns out, that signature aspect of the airport really started as a money saver.
It all started with a call from Bill Smith, who was the director of all the work at the new airport in Denver. And he called me, and I sat down at his desk, and he said, the building is over budget.
This is Kurt Fentress, one of two architects behind the design. His collaborator, Jim Bradburn, died recently, just as DIA marked its 30th anniversary. Fentress told Colorado Matters that the airport project had exceeded its budget. So much so, in fact, that the original architects lost their jobs over it. That's how Fentress ended up in the office several decades ago, being asked if he had any ideas on how to rein in spending.
And I said, well, how long do we have to perform this exercise of bringing it in budget? He looked out the window and turned back to me and said, we'll give you 3 weeks.
And as with so many great ideas, Fentress and Bradburn came up with it while at a bar. They got together in downtown Denver to work out a new design.
And so I was just talking about expressing the concept of bringing the mountains into it and making the building relate to the place that way. We were talking also about what makes the building over budget. The reason it was over budget was it was a primarily steel and glass structure.
That more economical approach, well, it might look like they just put a sheet over the roof, but
it's a very high-tech material. It's a Teflon-coated fiberglass. It was developed to cover radar installations during the Cold War across the North Pole and Canada. So everything slides off of it, as it did off of the pans we all bought many years ago now that were coated in Teflon. Nothing sticks to it.
Fun fact, that's the same material that covers those giant golf ball-looking radar installations at Buckley Space Force Base. Though, when it comes to DIA, Fentress wishes people would understand one thing.
It's not a tent. Everybody calls it the tent or the tents at the airport. It's a cable-supported system that is underneath that white roof that holds it down and holds it up.
Whatever you call it, DIA ended up with something unique. Fentress says that they were trying to create something as memorable as the Opera House in Sydney. And 30 years later, he's still enjoying it.
I think I have the same feeling a lot of people do when they're riding to the airport and you look out and you see the sun coming up behind the fabric roof structure or bouncing off of it. It's exciting. It's beautiful. When we land, I see people looking out the window of the airplane going, wow, that's something different.
You can hear Fentress's full interview in the recent episode of Colorado Matters. We have a link to it in our show notes. Reporting for today's show came from CPR's Andrew Dukakis and Caitlin Kim. Follow Colorado Today in your podcast app. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, celebrating the holiday with fresh local produce, quality meats, and seasonal favorites. Shop in-store or let Safeway do the shopping this holiday season with free curbside pickup using the Safeway app.